Hello everyone, and welcome once again to Caleb Likes Books. Today I have another book review for you, which is for the third entry in the Percy Jackson and the Olympian series, which is The Titan's Curse. This is book 3 of 5 of the series. I read the first couple books towards the end of last year. I think last fall-ish is when I read them. And I've been enjoying this series. It's one that I never got into when I was younger, despite being pretty much in the target audience age-wise. But I just never got into it, so I've been checking it out now as an adult to see if it's something that I feel like I might have missed. And I've enjoyed these books so far. They're not anything that I would consider to be amazing, anything that would be my favorites or anything, but they are fun, enjoyable books. And this one was no different. To talk about some positives, most of the things I have to say about this book are good things. I liked a lot of things in this book. First of all, I really enjoyed the main plot of this book. I thought it was really interesting having Percy and a couple of his friends going off to rescue some people, and the different situations that they run into. That's one of the fun things about the series to me, is just seeing the different things that happen along the way. Even though the actual goal of the main plot may not be super engaging to me, like with the first book, it was very much a hunt down a MacGuffin type of plot. And the second book was something similar. You know, these first three books are fairly similar in terms of what their plot actually is. But the fun thing about the plot is seeing the different situations, seeing the different scenarios that come up, the ways that the characters deal with them, and things like that. And that was definitely present here, and that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed some of the set pieces in here. Again, kind of like all the books so far have had some really good, memorable set pieces that I really enjoyed. This was also, I would say, the first book in the series where I felt like the action really stuck out to me. The other books have good action for sure, but this is the first time where I was reading it and I was actually really into some of the action. And especially I think the ending of this book was really good in terms of action, in terms of spectacle, and things that were, you know, not literal spectacle, but in the sense of just really cool stuff happening. So that also, the ending of this book I really enjoyed. Just, again, some of the scenarios, some of the action, like, combined together really work for me with this series, and I think with this book especially, I think it was the best so far. I also really enjoy the character interactions. This series is one of those where the characters individually don't stand out to me too much. I mean, they're memorable in the sense that, you know, they're all distinctive and you remember who's who because they have distinctive personalities to them. But I don't find the characters themselves to be incredibly engaging. But they all have some interesting quirks to them, interesting things about them, and I enjoy seeing them interact with one another. In this book, you have a handful of main characters. You have Percy, you have Grover, you have a couple of others who are all kind of interacting throughout the book, who go on this journey together. And even though I don't love most of these characters, I like them, but I don't love them. I do really enjoy their interactions with one another. I love the way that the dialogue is written and their banter and things like that. And again, I think it is excellently done in this book, much like the others. And again, perhaps even better than the others. In fact, in most ways, I would say I like this book slightly more than the first two. Not a whole lot more, but slightly more than the first two. Other good stuff here, the fantasy elements were good. I feel like they were maybe not as heavily involved as the first couple books. I mean, there definitely are some strong fantasy and mythological elements here, but I feel like with the first book especially, but even in the second book, there was a lot of times where certain characters or certain things would show up from mythology, and it would provide a very kind of fantastical thing, like, oh, there's this character from mythology who just kind of shows up, and that definitely happens here, but I feel like it doesn't stand out to me as much. It feels like everything kind of blends together a lot more nicely, which I guess could also be a good thing in its own right. But good fantasy elements in here that really kind of blend together well with things, whereas in the other books, you know, I felt like I would come across something and I'd be like, oh, there's something from mythology, and then kind of move on. Whereas this kind of, it felt very naturally integrated in a way that felt really, really nice. And I think that is also a way that this improves on the other two books. before it. That's most of the positive things I have to say about this book. In general, I just really enjoyed this a lot. And again, the narration, this book is told from first person perspective of Percy, and I really love Percy's voice in this series. And again, that's no different in this book. Just has a very distinctive voice, very humorous, very fun to read. In terms of negatives, there's not much. I do think that the early portions of the book were a little bit more of a drag. I do think this book improves as it goes along, and I honestly think that's the case for all of the books in the series so far, where initially I'm like, yeah, this is cool, but I'm not quite into it, and then as things go along, I get more invested. And I think that was definitely the case here, and I think it was perhaps the biggest disparity, I guess, between the early parts and the later parts of the book. In terms of each of these books so far, I think this had the biggest disparity of how interested I was at the beginning versus the end. Because in the first third of this book, I was thinking was probably my least favorite of the three, but as the book went along, I started getting really more into it, and now it's probably my favorite of the three. So it did take a little while for me to really get invested, but once I did, I really had a great time with basically the entire latter half of the book, maybe a little more. So yeah, even that negative still has kind of a positive flip side to it, I guess. So that's pretty much all I've got to say about this book. So overall, I did really enjoy it. And again, probably my favorite of the series so far. I think all three of these books that I have gone through so far have been on a pretty similar level in terms of how much I like them. They're, like I said earlier, they're not favorites, but they're enjoyable, fun books to read. And none of them really stand highly above the others. But this one I think is probably my favorite so far by just a little bit. Not by a huge amount. So as far as a rating out of 10 that I would give this, I think an 8 out of 10, maybe an 8.5. Pretty similar, again, to the scores that I gave the first two. I think it's on a pretty similar level, just that little bit better. So that's pretty much all I got to say. So let me know in the comments if you have read The Titan's Curse or the rest of the Percy Jackson books, or even if you've only read the first one or the second one, whatever. Let me know what you think of this book or the rest of the series. I look forward to finishing this series. I will probably be trying to finish it, the last two books, sometime within the next few months. I'd like to get this series done before we're a third or even hopefully a halfway through the year. But probably by springtime or sometime during the spring, I want to get this series done with. Although I know there's one more new book in this series that either is coming out or has come out or something like that. But in terms of the original series, I want to finish that up by sometime soon. So I'm looking forward to that. So that is pretty much it for this video. So thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time.